Sergo, if you like what we're doing here, if you support the show and you want to give support to the show, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Let's Talk Native. And if you do so, we'll provide you some exclusive content and some things that others aren't going to get when you get it. So support us by going to Patreon. Yahweh.
Let's Talk Native is produced at the LTN Studios on the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. We break all the rules for Native media by peeling back the layers of assimilation and indoctrination. We may step on a few toes through our examination of culture, art, politics, history, and identity. But the real goal here is to bring our people together by breaking down what separates us. So, welcome to Let's Talk Native with John Kane.
So everyone, welcome to Let's Talk Native. I'm John Kane. We're living in a time where we're very familiar with the role that activists are playing. There's calls for social justice. There's there are pipelines being blocked and highways and rail, and we have any number of issues that that we deal with almost on a daily basis. So the question is not only what can you do, but these are things you can do. And, so when I'm asked that question, what can I do to help? What can I do to become active? I got to start with one of the most basic things. Don't screw up other people who are doing good work. I mean, I'm wearing one of my mascot shirts here. One of the immediate things that I get confronted with as I'm trying to raise awareness about the problems that schools using mascots represent, the problem that is invariably there's going to be some Native person. So I have no problem with that. You know what? If you don't have a problem with Native mascots, then fine. Shut up and get out of the way. But don't tell me you don't have a problem or you're not concerned about the mascot issue and then lead a campaign against those of us who are trying to stop it. So the first thing that I'll tell anybody, you want to get involved with Native issues, don't fight your own people over them. Now, I know one of the criticisms that I could get is, look at the way you talk about Deb Haaland or, Paulette Jordan or any of these Native people who ran for office and that kind of stuff. Well, let's be clear. If Deb Haaland does some good work, I will be supporting the work that she does every step along the way. I'm just not crazy about our people leaving our system and joining theirs. I'm not crazy about our people becoming agents of the oppression, so to speak. Now, if they want to do some good work, then we'll do some good work, and I'll support the work that they do. I'm hopeful when I see Native people get in that other canoe, in that other ship. There's a part of me that begrudges it. There's no question about it. But I'm not saying that I'm going to begrudge them so much for leaving our canoe and entering their ship that I'm going to fight them when they try to do good work. So there is a difference there. So I want to be clear. Now, again, we do find ourselves oftentimes at odds with Native people as we're trying to champion things like even missing and murdered Indigenous women. Even the mascot issue. There's one group of people who claim to be Native that try to organize, and their pitch is educate, do not eradicate, or some stupid thing like that. So no, sometimes we do find ourselves fighting our own people. But what I'm saying is, let's not fight the people who are trying to do some good work. And even if you don't necessarily agree with their position on an issue, whether it's mascots or whether it's, look, we're gonna see stuff creep up on the debate over cannabis. In fact, we've already seen it on the other side of the imaginary line. There are people who've set up stores and they've had places you could buy, and some people just get beside themselves trying to stop it. We saw the same thing with tobacco sellers, tobacco manufacturers. There's always going to be some people who say, I'm against that. Well, look, if you're not for it, that's fine. But let's not fight our own people as we're trying to advance some things. And I'm not saying that we don't try to hold each other accountable and responsible as we do things that impact our communities. But that's not the same thing as saying, no, I hate you. You're a greedy business person, so we're gonna shut you down. No. I understand that people want to do that to drug dealers, and I'm not opposed to that. That's another thing. That's not providing something that is, a social benefit for the most part. So, but as far as what you can do, again, I've got to start with just don't fight our own people who are trying to do good work. I mean, then of course educate yourself. Find out why people oppose mascots. Find out why people are trying to be creative about developing economically on our territories. Look, we have some of the highest poverty levels of any place in North America. So we may have to be creative. And you know what? Being creative may mean that we cross the state on what they think we should be able to do. And I don't believe the states have authority to regulate what we do. So we may do some things that are going to be somewhat contentious. But don't fight our people. Look, if we have a bunch of people who are trying to stop a pipeline, don't fight our people. Even though some people may say, you know what, I'm gonna tear up some pipeline. I'm gonna destroy equipment. If you don't support that, then don't support it. But don't condemn people who are going to take nonviolent direct action to a level that you are not prepared to. See, this kind of gets to what I was talking about in previous shows, when we've got to empower the people, the younger people coming up, the people behind us, to do things that perhaps we weren't willing to do. Or maybe we didn't have the knowledge or the background, the experience, or maybe we just didn't have the courage. Or the innovation, the creativity to do certain things. So we need to understand that we have to survive, and not just survive. We need to thrive. We need to raise the quality of our lives. Now, when I talk about being in the activist community, there's some things that we need to fight against, and then there's some things that we need to fight for. So when I'm suggesting, if you want to know what you can do, find out what are the issues. We have housing issues, and we've talked about things like tiny homes. You can get involved in a project like that. It doesn't require a million-man army to do that kind of thing. Missing and murdered Indigenous women, a lot of that stuff is just raising awareness. So the first thing you can do is educate yourself on the range of issues that confront Native people. Educate yourself the best you can. There's plenty of books to read. If you don't want to read, there's any number of podcasts. You search it out. If people want to inquire from me, I'll make some recommendations. But find out what you can, and then try to discern who are the people who are selling a bill of goods, and who are the people that are really selling an idea that we should be embracing for our territories. But look, there are ag projects, and again, cannabis might be one of those ag projects. There's food sovereignty movements. There are, again, tiny home issues, housing issues. We have housing issues on every one of our territory. We have a shortage of housing. Well, we don't have to necessarily have a tribal government, for lack of a better word, that fixes things. We, as activists, as an activist community, it may not seem like an activist if you're doing a business. So if you get involved in tiny homes, yeah, you may be doing it for a career, but it is activism, because you're addressing a social need, housing. And there's any number of things. Look, we are dealing with social justice issues, whether it's death by cop or whether it's how we're being treated in court. And in the previous show, I talked about a court that wants to jam our way of life into their box by saying, oh no, we can't recognize the sovereignty of an individual because unless the tribe has given you that or something like that. So no, we have to address some of these social justice issues. We can support Black Lives Matter. There are any number of things that you can get involved in. So And we should. We should get involved in not just the social justice issues and some of the issues that face us here on territory, but again, a large part of our population lives off territory. So yeah, there's a lot of community stuff that we can do on territory, but there's also community stuff that can happen in any urban environment. But part of it is understanding. Look, mutual aid initiatives. There's plenty of those. My co-host Regan is very much involved in some of this. So there's any number of things that you can do involved with a Native community or as a Native community within a larger community, like in some of these urban environments. And we should be involved in social justice. We should be involved in racial equity. I've mentioned it before. We certainly have been the beneficiaries of some of the, the amazing movement that got behind Black Lives Matter. Again, even as the murderer of George Floyd is on trial right now, we know in the wake of the George Floyd murder that Washington football team changed its name. They didn't do it out of the goodness of their hearts. They did it because enough pressure got made socially that said that the benefactors of the Washington football team said, you got to change your name. We're not going to put our name on your stadium. We're not going to sell your Washington football gear. We're not going to do any of that stuff. So they had to change it. We were the beneficiary of some of that. And it's not because the Black community owed us. It's that we mesh with some of the same issues. So there's much that we can do. And there's more that we should do in collaboration with not only other oppressed people but allies. But there are a ton of things that we can address. And again, education is a big part of it. There's much that we can learn about our language and our culture if we don't already know. There's more that we can do in terms of not only what we educate ourselves with in terms of the reading material that's out there, the podcasts that are out there, the YouTube videos, all of that stuff. There's plenty for people to learn about. And look, most of what you're going to find in reading material or online, wherever you get it, are going to be ideas. They're going to be opinions. It's on you to find out what areas pique your interest enough that you want to pursue more. Because even if somebody says something like me, says something you completely don't agree with, you may say, I don't agree with his approach, but I see the problem. I'm going to find something that's great too. I think we need multi-pronged approaches to any number of problems. So whether we're talking about economic development, whether we're talking about social justice, whether we're talking about how we educate our kids. Look, we have a unique opportunity coming out of this whole pandemic issue to play a bigger role in the education of our children. I don't know how many people are doing that. I'm not a parent anymore. My kids are grandkids. So, but there's a lot more that we could do. We should take advantage of somewhat of what technology has provided, or what's the fact that we've been compelled to use technology for education. We could do more with our families and within our communities. We do have issues that we are fighting. We are fighting pipelines. So whether we're talking about Line 3 or Dakota Access Pipeline or other parts of the Keystone XL pipeline, we're fighting fossil fuel industries. We're fighting gas lines that are being run even through places like New York. Again, Regan is very much involved in some of that stuff. And we have this fossil fuels infrastructure that is impacting all of our territories. And even beyond the fossil fuels infrastructure, I think about here in Seneca Territory, we still have radioactive leaching happening at West Valley nuclear demonstration facility that's leaching into our river. So we know this stuff is there, and we all can play a role. And look, I know it's tough. One of the things that when you do kind of narrow in on an issue that you want to champion, there's always going to be somebody saying, why are you wasting your time doing that? Aren't there more important things to do? We can't all do everything. In fact, nobody can get involved in every aspect. I try to cover as many issues as possible. Why? Because I'm a voice on the radio and a voice on a podcast. But in terms of what I actually do with my personal time, there's only so much you can do. So let's acknowledge that there's many of us that are doing different things, and let's support each other the best that we can. And that might mean financially, maybe mean throwing some money at a cause, but it also may mean encouragement. And to the extent that you can do something on a given day that helps somebody else's cause, even if it's not the specific issue that you have selected to champion, you can help each other. If there's a walk, or if there's a rally, if there's something that's close by in your region, frankly, if you can talk to other people, spread the word. Look, I've talked about missing and murdered Indigenous women. One of the biggest problems that we have with the danger that our women, girls, any of the most vulnerable people on our territories face is the lack of infrastructure. Part of that infrastructure is just word of mouth. How much can we communicate about somebody who turned up missing initially? And then what can we do within our own networks? I don't mean just post it on Facebook. But what can we do within our community to raise awareness? Hey, have you seen such and such? Well, she was last seen with such and such or whatever. I mean, these are the kinds of things that go a long way. Most of the time, when one of our younger girls from our territory turns up missing, it's the word of mouth that finally exposes where she left, why she left, or where she is, and so we need more of that. And of course, the other thing that we need to do, and it gets back to what I was talking about a little bit earlier, is we need to make sure, and I've talked about this on previous shows, we need to do what we can to raise the quality of life. So for all of the things that we want to talk about in terms of topics that we could be an activist about, the thing that we should be most geared towards is raising the quality of life of our family and the people around us and the communities that we're part of. Because that's how we stay engaged with each other. Because when where you live is no longer desirable or has been undesirable for a very long time, how do you keep your kids? How do you protect your family members who are desperately trying to break out of the community they're in because there are no opportunities, because there is no prospect for their future in the given territories? These are the kinds of causes that we need to fight for. So whether it's whatever the latest is going to be in terms of economic development, maybe it is cannabis and marijuana, maybe it is some new venture, maybe it's more of this entertainment, filming, internet presence. Look, I know that any market can get saturated, but I'll tell you, we are a long way from saturating the market in terms of people who are willing to get the word out, people who are willing to educate on camera, on podcasts, on internet, whatever. We need to do more. So, even though this is what I do, I wish there were more of us. I wish there were more voices out there, and more voices, frankly, that I think are credible and that are constructive. Because I think we need our best voices, our best minds out there, and we need to create the opportunity for more young people to partake in these conversations. There is a lot that people face, and I talk about identity as it's one of the my biggest themes all the time, and there's so much that's eroding at it. And look, I understand that we do need to sustain ourselves, so we are players in the capitalist system to some extent, but we could provide more. We could have more choices about what we do in terms of how we support our families, what career choices we make. And it's difficult. It's difficult because there's a lot of distraction out there. And, we can also be distracted about what we view as a higher quality of life. It may not necessarily be, your income statement at the end of the year. It may be, what have you done with your family, with your community members that simply has been more enjoyable. So I think we have to rethink some of this stuff. But in terms of when you ask the question, what can I do? Man, there's so many answers and there's so many choices there. And I know the first thing that when somebody gets out of high school or whatever else, the first thing people say, well, what can I do for a job? Well, there are jobs and there's careers. And I think balancing the work that we want to do for ourselves and for each other, that is, that should be the ultimate goal. Look, you might be flipping burgers, for a couple of years. You may be doing some work. We all end up doing jobs we don't necessarily like. And that's unfortunate. I mean, one of the jobs that many people do, they enlist in the armed forces because they don't have any other, it seems like the best option at the time. And I'm saying, let's rethink about those choices we make. Let's not jump into something that not only could have negative consequences to you. So when I think about how many Native people still enlist in the military, you're being used by another government oftentimes to inflict harm on people. It may have seemed like a good choice for you when you're 18 years old coming out of high school because you haven't perhaps thought out your next steps. And everybody wants to be all you can be, right? That they're going to encourage you, that this is going to be good for you. Well, if you have some goal you want to achieve, you really need to think about the steps you're going to take to get there. And I understand some people join the military for financial opportunities to go to school and that kind of stuff. But there are other choices. So as I'm talking about the things that we need to do, there are some great authors out there. There are many books that we could read. There are films that everybody should see. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of different ways to get that information. Look, if you're not the kind of person who's going to sit there and read a book cover to cover, some of the best authors I know, Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, Dino Gilio Whitaker, they do audiobooks. There are podcasts that are out there. I mentioned this before. There are a number of people who are putting good information out on a range of topics, and some of these are associated with trades. They're not just about activism. But I will argue that some of the trades that we need to advance in our territories are a form of activism. So as we start figuring out what we need, and we do our own essentially needs assessment in our territories or in the communities wherever they are, urban, native territory, wherever they are, we need to do a bit of a needs assessment. And as Native people and as responsible people within a community, we should figure out what we can do to fill those needs. So what might seem like acts of volunteerism, and I think volunteerism is really important because not only does it fulfill, again, that desire to help, but there's also a learning experience from that. And out of some of that volunteerism, there is opportunity. So we may figure out, well, okay, this is what we've been volunteering to do, but maybe there's a business here. Maybe there's a business here that can serve a certain niche need in a community. So these are the kinds of things. And I know it's complicated, and I'm not giving very, very specific answers when somebody says, what can I do? But part of it is you need to find out where your desires run. And as you become more familiar with what's happening on Native territories and what's happening to our people and how we envision where we will be. Well, I get asked this all the time. If we could snap our fingers and have the things that we want, if we could solve the problems that our people face, what would our communities look like? Well, look, that's not even the question for me anymore. It's for those of you coming up behind us. It is your future. So we have to envision what that future is going to be and then look at the various ways that we can achieve elements of that future, that good future that you want. But I know one thing. I don't want to see our territories continue to be, experience this mass exodus of our most ambitious people leaving our territories. I don't want to convince our best and brightest that the only opportunities you can realize are off territory. If we continue down that road, we will have depleted the most valuable thing that our territories have, the human resources that we represent. So we need to make a concerted effort to not only recognize the needs, but to pursue the opportunities that fill those needs. And, look, maybe some of those needs are short term. Maybe, concentrating on suicide prevention or drug prevention or, substance abuse. These are very real needs. But maybe we solve them. But part of what solving some of those needs may be is creating the opportunities that make some of the challenges that our people experience, move towards leaving our territories, towards substance abuse, towards, some of the mental health issues that our people suffer with. We really need to do more. And so when I get asked the question, what can we do? There's so many needs on our territory. And with those needs are opportunities. And I'm not saying opportunities to exploit people or take advantage of people, but to serve the needs and to fill those needs. But we have to understand the history. We have to understand where we came from, why we're in the circumstance that we're in. Because frankly, some of that is what motivates you. When we realize that we represent a generation that has survived some of the worst atrocities a world could have thrown at us, that should encourage us to do more. That should inspire us to, to inspire the next generation behind us. We should be encouraged by the fact that we remain and that we have survived some of these horrendous atrocities. But let's not forget why. Let's not forget who did what. And there are trust issues. And that's why I say we need to have an approach towards some of these issues that don't depend on the state governments or the federal governments, and maybe not even tribal governments. I think we need to find the like-minded people. I've talked about this before. We need to find the like-minded people in each one of our communities that do want to champion some of these issues, support the issues that we may not necessarily be fully engaged in, but find the people who will work with you to engage in the issues that you want to be the champion for. And there are many to choose from. The needs in our communities are dramatic. The challenges are dramatic, but the opportunities are dramatic too. Obviously one of the biggest challenges always going to be the remoteness of our territories and how isolated we as a people feel, even in the cities. We oftentimes can feel isolated, but there's a learning associated with that too. How do we break out of that? And oftentimes we aren't going to do it alone. So we have to team up. We do have to form, friendships, partnerships, allies, alliances. We need to have those. And look, we may not all want to get to the exact same place, but to the extent that we can walk with each other to get to further a goal, we should do all that we can to do that. So I guess that's my show for today. I'm basically saying, look, if you want to know what you can do, then do the homework and find out what your needs are in your community and what you can do to help fulfill those needs. And look, reach out to people some that you know. And look, if you are part of the older generation, you need to do what you can do to support the younger generation. And if you're part of the younger generation, you need to tap onto us. You need to hit us up and say, look, there are things that we want to do that you guys didn't. Can you support us? And that I don't mean just moral support. I mean financial support. So let's build the networks. Let's build the relationships that allow us to advance the issues that we need to advance. But I'm going to end this by saying what I started with. But let's not fight each other. Let's not be our own enemy. Whether you agree with somebody's approach to solving a problem or not, if you don't agree, then come up with another approach. Don't try to fight somebody. We we need all hands on deck. So if somebody's fighting a cause that you don't support, then just don't support it, but don't fight them. I guess that's one of my main messages. So I want to thank you for listening. I'm John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Yahweh.